The first light of a Roman dawn is not a sudden arrival, but a slow, charcoal-grey dissolution of the heavy velvet shadows that have clung to the narrow, winding alleys of the Suburra throughout the long, still night. It begins as a mere suggestion, a thinning of the darkness that reveals the jagged, uneven silhouettes of the towering insulae, those great, timber-framed apartment blocks that lean toward one another as if whispering secrets across the cobblestones. You lie still for a moment, suspended in that soft, liminal space between the heavy pull of sleep and the gradual awareness of the waking world, feeling the coarse texture of the woolen blanket against your skin and the cool, damp air that has drifted through the unglazed window aperture. The city is still mostly silent, yet it is a silence filled with the ghost echoes of 1,000 lives pressed together in these vertical labyrinths of brick and wood. Far below, the rhythmic, metallic ring of a horse's hoof against stone sounds like a heartbeat, slow and steady, as a lone cart carries its load of grain toward the markets before the daytime ban on wheeled traffic takes hold. You listen to the deep, resonant breath of the building itself, the settling of old beams, the faint scuttle of a mouse behind a plaster wall, and the distant, muffled cough of a neighbor 3 floors down. This room is small, a modest cell within the hive. But in this pale pre-dawn hour, it is a sanctuary of stillness where the weight of history and the demands of the day have not yet fully settled upon your shoulders. The walls, once painted a simple ochre, are now faded to a dusty, comforting terracotta, and the single lamp on the wooden stool has long since flickered out, leaving only the faint, acrid scent of olive oil lingering in the air as you finally push back the covers. The floorboards are cool beneath your feet, a grounding sensation that connects you to the earth and the foundations of this ancient, sprawling metropolis. There is a deliberate slowness to your movements, a ritualized calm that preserves the tranquility of the morning. You reach for the ceramic pitcher, its glazed surface smooth and cold, and pour a thin stream of water into a shallow terracotta basin. The sound is like a tiny waterfall in the immense quiet, a clear iron crystalline trickle that seems to wash away the last lingering veils of sleep. You splash the water onto your face, feeling the sharp, refreshing sting of it, and as the droplets bead on your skin, you take a deep breath of the morning air, which carries the scent of wood smoke, damp stone, and the distant, briny tents of the Tiber. There is no haste here. The ritual of washing is a meditation, a way of reclaiming your body for the day ahead. You use a small piece of pumice and a scrap of linen to scrub your skin, moving with a practiced, gentle rhythm that mirrors the slow awakening of the streets outside. The light in the room is growing now, shifting from a bruised purple to a soft, pearlescent rose, illuminating the few possessions that anchor your life in this corner of the empire. In a small wooden casket, you keep your cosmetic powders of white lead and red ochre, and a tiny vial of soot for the eyes but for now. You leave them untouched, favoring the raw, honest clarity of the early hour. Your clothing is simple, yet chosen with a quiet, functional dignity. You pull on a tunica of undyed wool, the fabric heavy and reassuring, its folds falling around your limbs like a soft embrace. Over this, you arrange the dark toga that marks your status, a garment that carries the weight of social reality, but also serves as a protective layer against the world. As you wrap the heavy fabric around your shoulder, you feel the familiar friction of the weave, a tactile reminder of the boundaries that define your life in Rome. You reach under the edge of your straw mattress and retrieve a small, worn leather pouch. Inside, The few bronze sestertii and a single, thin silver denarius clink softly together, a metallic music that speaks of survival, of bread, and of the precarious security of a life lived on the margins. You tuck the pouch into a hidden fold of your clothing, feeling its small, solid weight against your hip as you move. The sounds from outside are beginning to thicken. Now the distant rhythmic thumping of a fuller at work, the sharp cry of a bird circling above the rooftops, and the low, guttural murmur of voices as the first laborers emerge from their doorways. Through the thin walls of the insula, you hear the domestic symphony of your neighbors, the scrape of a chair, the clatter of a ceramic bowl, and the soft, rhythmic shushing of a mother calming a restless child. These are the sounds of humanity in its most basic form, a shared existence that transcends class and occupation, binding everyone together in the collective effort of beginning another day. You turn your attention to your hair, combing through the long, dark strands with a bone comb, the teeth clicking softly against the tangles. You braid it with slow, methodical precision, twisting the sections over and over until they are gathered into a neat, sensible coil at the back of your neck. There is a quiet satisfaction in this order, a small victory over the chaos of the city. As you work, you look out of the high, narrow window, watching as the sun finally crests the horizon, casting long, golden fingers across the sea of terracotta roof tiles. The light catches the smoke rising from 1,000 cooking fires, turning the haze into a shimmering, ethereal veil that hangs over the valley of the Forum. You can see the distant, gleaming white marble of the great temples on the Capitoline Hill, their columns standing like silent sentinels over the awakening city. They seem to belong to another world, a world of marble and gold and eternal power. Yet you are the one who feels the heartbeat of Rome in the cold water of your basin and the rough wool of your tunic. You take a piece of hard, dark bread from a shelf and chew it slowly, the nutty, earthy flavor grounding you in the present moment. It is simple sustenance, but it is enough. The room is now fully bathed in the soft, honeyed glow of the morning, and the dust motes dance in the shafts of light like tiny, golden spirits. You feel a sense of profound, quiet readiness. The city is calling to you now, not with a roar, but with 1,000 small, insistent invitations. You hear the creak of a heavy door opening on its iron hinges, the splash of a bucket being emptied into the gutter, and the rhythmic clip-clop of sandals on the paving stones below. You stand by your door for a final moment of stillness, listening to the house breathe. The air is slightly warmer now, carrying the smell of freshly baked bread from the pistrinum down the street, a warm, yeasty scent that promises the continuity of life. You check your appearance one last time in a small, polished bronze mirror, seeing not a symbol or a category, but a person with a steady gaze and a quiet, enduring strength. You reach for your mantle, a simple cloak to ward off the morning chill, and drape it over your shoulders. The iron key to your room feels heavy and cold in your hand as you step across the threshold and pull the door shut behind you. The click of the lock is a final, decisive sound that marks the transition from the private world of the insula to the public theatre of the Roman street. As you begin the long descent down the narrow, winding wooden stairs, each step creates a soft, rhythmic thud that echoes in the stairwell. You pass other doors, behind which lives are stirring. Dreams are being put away, and the business of survival is beginning in earnest. With each floor you descend, the sounds of the city grow louder, more textured, and more complex. You reach the ground floor, where the air is thick with the scent of damp earth and old stone, and you pause at the entrance to the building. Outside, the sunlight is spilling into the street, illuminating the worn surfaces of the cobblestones and the vibrant, chaotic energy of the Subura. You take one last, deep, calming breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and then you step out into the golden light. The day is unfolding before you, a long, winding path of moments yet to be lived. And as you merge into the flow of the awakening city, you move with the quiet, rhythmic grace of one who knows how to navigate the currents of time. The sun is higher now, warming the brickwork of the ancient walls, and the shadows are retreating into the corners of the alleys, leaving the world bright, clear, and full of the slow, steady pulse of a Roman morning. The transition from the cool, sheltered shadows of the insula to the open air of the street is a sensory threshold, a soft collision of temperature and light that settles over your skin like a physical weight. As your sandals meet the basalt paving stones of the Subura, the uneven surface feels solid and ancient beneath you, the deep ruts carved by generations of heavy cartwheels appearing as long, flowing rivers of shadow in the low morning sun. The air here is thicker than it was in your room, a rich tapestry of scents that tells the story of a city waking up to its own necessity. There is the sharp, acidic temps of the vinegar water sold by street hawkers, the deep, charcoal musk of the braziers, and the pervasive, comforting aroma of the nearby pastry. You watch as the baker's slaves begin to haul the first heavy baskets of Pony Secundus out to the wooden stalls, the loaves still steaming in the damp air. Their crusts are dark, honest brown that smells of toasted grain and hard work. There is a rhythmic, percussive quality to the morning, the thwack of a rug being beaten against a stone balcony, the melodic clink of copper coins being counted onto a wooden counter, and the distant, low lowing of oxen being led toward the markets of the villa. You walk with a slow, measured pace, your toga draped carefully to signal your place in this complex social hierarchy, moving through the thickening crowds with the practiced invisibility of those who are seen but rarely acknowledged. The light is changing rapidly now, climbing the red brick facades of the apartment blocks and turning the upper stories into beacons of brilliant, dusty gold, while the street level remains submerged in a cool, blue-grey haze. You pass a small shrine at a crossroads, where a flickering oil lamp still burns at the feet of the Lares Compitols, the guardian spirits of the neighborhood. The scent of burning laurel leaves drifts toward you, a thin, herbal thread of smoke that briefly masks the heavier smells of the gutter. A group of laborers, their tunics stained with the grey dust of a construction site near the forum, walks past you with heavy, rhythmic strides. Their conversation, a low, guttural murmur that flows around you like water around a stone. You do not look at them directly, nor do they look at you, yet there is a mutual recognition of the shared burden of the day, a silent pact of endurance that binds the city's working poor together in the early hours. You find yourself navigating the narrow space between a vegetable stall, where a man is meticulously arranging bright green leeks and pale, earthy turnips, and a mule-drawn cart loaded with amphorae of cheap Sabine wine. The mule's breath is a warm, hay-scented cloud in the cool air, and as you pass, you reach out a hand to brush against the rough, sun-warmed wood of the cart, a fleeting, grounding touch that connects you to the physical reality of the commerce that keeps Rome breathing. As the streets begin to widen toward the more monumental heart of the city, the architecture shifts from the precarious timber of the Subura to the more enduring weight of travertine and tuff. You move toward the shaded sanctuary of a long, colonnaded portico near the Baths of Agrippa, where the massive granite columns cast long, cool stripes of shade across the mosaic floor. This is a place of waiting, a space where time stretches out into a long, languid ribbon of observation. You find a spot near a fluted column, leaning back against the smooth, sun-chilled stone, and watch the world assemble itself. The sound of the city here is different, more resonant, more echoes of footsteps on marble, the splashing of a nearby fountain providing a constant, shimmering background hiss that mimics the sound of falling rain. You watch the early bathgoers arrive, men of varying status accompanied by slaves carrying towels and oil flasks, their voices ringing out with a booming, performative confidence. You observe them from the periphery of their vision, a steady, non-judgmental witness to the theatre of Roman masculinity. Some glance your way with a brief, calculating flicker of the eyes, while others look through you as if you were merely another architectural detail, a shadow among the pillars. You accept both with a calm, internal stillness, your hands tucked into the folds of your mantle, feeling the slow, rhythmic pulse of your own breathing. Patience is a craft you have mastered over the years, a way of inhabiting time without letting it wear you down. You watch a beetle crawl slowly across the intricate geometry of the floor mosaics, its iridescent shell catching the light as it navigates the tiny gaps between the tesserae. To the hurried passer-by, the hour is a thing to be spent or conquered. But to you, it is a vast, open landscape to be navigated with care. The sun continues its slow, inevitable ascent, and the heat begins to radiate from the stones, a dry, baking warmth that brings out the scent of the nearby gardens, the heavy, sweet perfume of climbing roses and the sharp, resinous scent of cypress trees. You see a group of children playing a game of latrine coulis on the steps of a nearby temple, their small, focused faces illuminated by the strengthening light, their laughter a bright, silver sound that cuts through the heavier drone of the morning. A woman of higher status passes by in a litter carried by 4 sturdy Gauls, the silk curtains fluttering just enough to reveal a glimpse of jewelry and the heavy scent of imported nard. For a moment, the world of luxury and the world of the street touch, 2 parallel lives intersecting in the shared air of the portico. You do not feel envy, only a quiet, observational curiosity about the different weights people carry, the fatigue of the morning. The lingering stiffness from a short night's sleep begins to soften under the influence of the warmth. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, the thin soles of your sandals offering little protection against the hard marble. Yet the discomfort is familiar, a known quantity in the equation of your day. You watch a vendor setting up a small portable stove at the edge of the square, the smell of frying chickpeas and salted pork starting to drift through the air, making your stomach tighten with a dull, persistent hunger. You reach into your hidden pouch and touch the coins there, the metal warm from your body heat, and decide to wait a little longer. The routine of waiting is interspersed with small, human interactions that go unnoticed by the history books. A nod from the old man who sweeps the portico, a brief, wordless exchange of glances with another woman standing near a distant archway, a silent agreement of shared space and shared labor. These moments are the invisible threads that hold the fabric of your social world together, providing a sense of community that exists outside the formal structures of law and family. As the morning progresses toward the 4th hour, the light loses its golden softness and turns into a sharp, brilliant white that flattens the shadows and makes the marble glare. The city is now a roaring machine of sound, the shouting of auctioneers, the rhythmic chanting of students at a nearby school, the constant, grinding noise of the crowds moving through the narrow bottlenecks of the streets. You move from the portico to a smaller, more discreet location near a tavern at a busy crossroads, where the shade of a tattered linen awning offers a brief respite from the intensifying heat. Here, the smells are more aggressive soured wine, grilled offal, and the pungent aroma of fermented fish sauce from the open thermopolia. You watch as a group of sailors, recently arrived from Ostia, navigate the crowd with rolling gaits, their skin tanned to the color of dark leather and their speech a thick, salty dialect you only half understand. One of them pauses, his shadow falling across your feet, and for a moment, the world narrows down to a single, silent interaction, a silent negotiation of need and possibility. But he moves on, drawn by the louder call of the tavern, and you are left again in the cooling shadow, your back against the rough, sun-baked brick of the wall. The passage of time is marked by the shifting shadows of the sundials in the public squares, the bronze needles casting long, thin lines that crawl across the stone like the hands of a slow, giant insect. You find yourself retreating into a state of quiet, internal reflection, a mental space where the noise of Rome becomes a distant, rhythmic surf. You think of the bread you ate this morning, the coolness of the water in your basin, and the way the light looked when it first hit the roof tiles of your insula. These small, sensory memories are anchors that keep you from being swept away by the vastness of the city. You observe the way the sunlight catches the dust kicked up by a passing carriage, turning the air into a shimmering, golden soup that seems to hold the very essence of the afternoon. The fatigue in your limbs is now a steady, humming presence, a reminder of the physical cost of endurance. Yet there is a dignity in your persistence, a quiet, unshakable strength in the way you occupy your space. The streets are now at their busiest, a swirling kaleidoscope of colors, sounds, and smells that would be overwhelming to anyone but a true child of Rome. You see the various grades of society passing by: the senators in their purple-bordered togas, the freedmen in their simple tunics, the slaves carrying heavy loads with a bowed, silent grace. You are a part of this movement, a vital, if overlooked gear in the massive, complex machinery of the empire. The air is shimmering with heat now, the stone buildings radiating the energy they have absorbed since dawn, and the sound of 1,000 conversations blends into a single, low-frequency hum that vibrates in your chest. As the morning deepens and the sun climbs higher toward its zenith, the soft, honeyed light of the dawn is replaced by a sharp, unforgiving brilliance that turns the white marble of the nearby temples into mirrors of blinding intensity. The air, once thin and cool, has become a dense, palpable medium, heavy with the mounting heat and the collective breath of 1,000,000 souls moving through the labyrinth of the city. You feel the temperature rising through the soles of your sandals, the ancient paving stones now radiating a dry, baking warmth that seeped into your bones with a slow, steady persistence. The Subura and the surrounding districts have reached their frantic, midday crescendo. The narrow arteries of the city are choked with a human tide that flows with a strange, organic rhythm. You navigate this press of bodies with a quiet, practiced grace, tucking your elbows close to your sides and moving through the gaps in the crowd like a shadow passing through a forest. The sound of the city has transformed from a collection of individual noises into a vast, singular roarer, low-frequency vibration composed of the rhythmic clack-clack of wooden clogs, the metallic jangle of harness bells, the high-pitched calls of street vendors selling hot sausages and honeyed nuts, and the constant, multilingual murmur of a world empire in conversation. You pass a group of Praetorian guards, their polished bronze breastplates catching the sun and throwing jagged shards of light against the soot-stained walls of the nearby shops. They move with an indifferent, heavy-set authority, the red crests of their helmets nodding in time with their strides. To them, you are merely part of the urban landscape, as fixed and unremarkable as the milestones on the Appian Way, and you find a strange, quiet safety in that anonymity, seeking a brief respite from the relentless glare. You move toward a small, semicircular fountain nestled into the base of a towering retaining wall. The water spills from the mouth of a stone dolphin into a moss-covered basin, a sound so clear and cooling that it seems to lower the temperature of the air around you by several degrees. You reach out a hand, letting the cold spray dampen your wrist, a sensation that sends a shiver of relief through your heat-weary body. Near the fountain, a vendor has set up a small table under a tattered linen canopy, selling cups of watered-down wine and crusts of bread smeared with a paste of salty olives and garlic. You count out a few small copper quadrantes, the lowest denomination of the empire's currency, their surfaces worn smooth by 1,000 hands. The metal is warm and smells faintly of tin and sweat. You receive your portion, a simple ceramic cup of posca, the sharp, vinegary wine favored by soldiers and laborers, and find a seat on a low stone ledge in the shadow of a nearby shrine dedicated to Mercury. The drink is tart and refreshing, cutting through the dust that has settled in the back of your throat, and the bread is chewy and honest. As you eat, you observe the social hierarchy of the city as it parades before you in a slow-motion tableau of status and necessity. A wealthy matron passes by in a curtained litter, her path cleared by 2 burly slaves who move with a weary, rhythmic endurance, their skin glistening with sweat. Behind them walks a Greek tutor, his face lined with the quiet frustration of a man who knows more than his masters, clutching a bundle of papyrus scrolls to his chest. You watch a group of merchants from the provinces, men in heavy tunics of Syrian wool and Phrygian caps, arguing over the price of a shipment of grain, their gestures expansive and theatrical. In this midday hour, everyone is bound by the same physical constraints of heat and hunger. Regardless of the gold or the chains they carry, the monotony of the weight is not a burden to you, but a form of labor in itself, a quiet, internal endurance that requires a steady mind and a slow heart. You lean your head back against the cool stone of the shrine, feeling the vibration of the city through the masonry. Above, the sky is a hard, flat cerulean, stripped of any clouds and vibrating with the sheer volume of light. You watch the way the dust motes dance in the heavy air, a chaotic, shimmering ballet that seems to mirror the movement of the crowds below. A small bird, a common sparrow, hops along the rim of the fountain basin, dipping its beak into the water with quick, nervous movements, and you find yourself entranced by the simple, uncomplicated nature of its existence. There is no drama in this observation, only a deep, meditative focus on the present moment. You notice the textures of the world with a heightened clarity, the pitted surface of the travertine, the oily sheen on the surface of the standing water in the gutters, the frayed edges of a beggar's cloak, and the intricate, colorful embroidery on the hem of a passing senator's tunic. These details are the alphabet of your daily life, a language of things that you have learned to read over years of patient watching. The survival strategies you employ are subtle and non-verbal, a slight shift in your posture, a softening of your gaze, a way of leaning against the stone that signals availability without desperation. When a man pauses near the shrine, his eyes lingering on you for a moment longer than the others. There is a wordless negotiation that takes place in the space between heartbeats, a calculation of value, safety, and time. You have learned to read the subtle cues of the body, the tension in a shoulder, the hesitation in a step, the way a hand rests on a belt. If the moment passes, as it often does, you return to your stillness without a trace of resentment, simply folding the experience into the long, continuous narrative of the day. As the morning transitions into the true midday, the light becomes almost physical, a heavy, golden pressure that seems to push the city into a state of forced lethargy. The grander shops begin to pull down their heavy wooden shutters, and the pace of the foot traffic slows as people seek the deep shade of the great colonnades or the cool, humid interiors of the public baths. The sounds of construction, the hammering and the sawing fade away as the workmen take their midday break, replaced by the rhythmic, percussive sound of dice clicking in wooden cups in the nearby taverns. You feel the fatigue of the long-standing hours beginning to pool in your lower back and calves, a dull, thrumming ache that you acknowledge and then set aside. You adjust the heavy folds of your toga, the wool now warm to the touch, and take another slow sip of the watered wine. The liquid is no longer cold, but it still provides a necessary grounding. You watch the shadows of the columns across the square. They have shrunk into short black pools at the base of the pillars, leaving nowhere to hide from the sun's vertical gaze. The air is so still that the smoke from a nearby sacrificial altar rises in a perfectly straight, grey line toward the heavens, a silent prayer for prosperity, or perhaps just for a breath of wind. You think of the millions of lives being lived simultaneously in this city, the births in the upper stories of the insulae, the deaths in the dark corners of the alleys, the grand speeches in the Senate, and the quiet, desperate prayers in the small shrines. You feel like a single drop of water in an infinite, sun-drenched ocean. Midday is approaching with a heavy, inevitable tread, the light becoming so harsh that the colors of the city seem to bleed away into a universal, dusty white. The world is suspended in a state of high noon tension, a breathless pause before the long, slow decline into the afternoon. You stand up from your ledge, your movements slow and deliberate, and prepare to move once more into the white-hot heart of the city, your silhouette sharp and solitary against the ancient stone, a testament to the quiet, unyielding power of routine and the long, slow rhythm of a life lived in the shadows of the eternal morning. The peak of the day arrives, not as a climax of sound, but as a heavy, breathless blanket of silence that smothers the city in a shimmering haze of heat. It is the 6th hour, the meridiatio, when the great thrumming engine of Rome slows its frantic pace and the pulse of the streets drops to a faint, rhythmic murmur. The sun is a white, molten eye directly above, stripping the world of its comforting shadows and leaving the cobblestones to bake until the very air seems to vibrate with a dry, metallic intensity. You move with a slow, deliberate dichotomy of motion, each step a conscious negotiation with the weight of the atmosphere, seeking the profound, subterranean cool of a familiar tavern tucked into the ground floor of a massive, stone-faced insula near the theatre of Marcellus. Stepping over the threshold is like diving into deep, still water. The transition from the blinding glare of the street to the dim, cavernous interior is so sudden that for a moment the world is reduced to a soft, pulsing violet behind your eyelids. As your vision clears, the tavern reveals itself as a sanctuary of shadow and damp stone, where the air carries the cool, fermented scent of old wine, damp sawdust, and the earthy musk of the storage pits beneath the floorboards. You find a quiet corner far from the entrance, sliding onto a worn wooden bench, polished smooth by the passage of countless bodies. The stone wall behind you is a miracle of temperature, a solid, chilled expanse that draws the mounting fever from your shoulders and spine, grounding you in a moment of absolute, unmoving stillness in this dim light. The world feels smaller, more intimate, and more manageable. A few other souls have sought refuge, a retired porter slumped over a table with his head resting on his folded arms. Two elderly men whispering in a low rhythmic dialect over a game of tesserie, and the tavern keeper who moves with a slow, aquatic grace as he wipes down the counter with a damp cloth. The sound of his work, the soft swishy shift of the linen and the occasional clink of a ceramic beaker, is a soothing, repetitive melody that encourages the mind to wander. You order a small bowl of salted beans and a cup of wine, heavily diluted with cool water from the cistern, paying with the copper coins that have grown warm in your palm. The taste is simple and grounding, the saltiness of the beans sparking a quiet fire on your tongue, the water washing away the grit of the midday streets. As you eat, the physical exhaustion of the morning begins to settle over you, not as a sharp pain, but as a soft, pervasive heaviness that makes your limbs feel like they are made of weighted wool. It is a state of being that allows the barriers of the present to thin, letting the ghosts of memory drift through the quiet corridors of your mind like the scent of wood smoke. On a winter evening, you find yourself thinking of a time before the stone and the marble, a distant, golden-hued memory of a landscape defined by the sway of tall grass and the rhythmic thrum-thrum of a loom in a small, sun-drenched courtyard. You remember the smell of sun-warmed earth after a sudden summer rain, a scent far cleaner and sharper than the complex, layered odors of the city. You recall the calloused, gentle hands of a woman who taught you how to spin wool. The spindle worry like a captive insect in the quiet afternoon. There is no sharp grief in these thoughts, only a soft, amber-tinted nostalgia for a life that seems to belong to someone else. A girl who walked on soft soil instead of hard basalt. Your journey to Rome was not a single, dramatic event, but a series of slow, inevitable shifts of family debt that could not be paid, a contract signed in a dusty provincial office, and the long, swaying journey in the back of a merchant's cart as the horizon grew more crowded with the monuments of the empire. You remember the first time you saw the city from the heights of the Janiculum, a sprawling, impossible sea of terracotta and white stone that seemed to stretch on forever, and the way the air felt different, thicker, busier, filled with the electricity of a million competing desires. You have become a part of it now, a single thread in the vast, multicolored tapestry of the Roman world, but in the quiet of the midday heat. That girl with the spindle still lives in the stillness of your heart. The tavern grows even quieter as the heat outside reaches its most oppressive intensity. The porter is now fast asleep, his breathing a slow, resonant bass note that anchors the room in a state of shared lethargy. You watch a single fly circle in a shaft of light that has managed to pierce through a high, narrow vent in the wall. The insect's wings glitter like tiny shards of mica as it dances in the dust-choked air. This is the time of day when the economic reality of your life feels most like a slow, enduring weight. You think of the rent for your room in the insula, the cost of the oil for your lamp, and the steady, grinding necessity of the coins in your pouch. Every day is a cycle of survival, a careful balancing of accounts in a city that values nothing so much as gold and status. Yet there is a dignity in your endurance, a quiet pride in the way you have learned to navigate the currents of the Subura and the Forum without being swept away. You are a scholar of human nature, a witness to the secret lives of the city's inhabitants. And in the silence of the afternoon, you realize that you know Rome more intimately than many of the senators who walk its streets. You know the way a man's voice changes when he is lonely, the way a soldier's shoulders sag when the weight of his armor becomes too much, and the way the city's mask of grandeur slips when the sun goes down. As you sit in the cool dimness, you observe the textures of the tavern with a sleepy, unfocused intensity. The floor is made of hard-packed earth and crushed tile, its surface a mosaic of browns and reds that have been trodden into a smooth, even plane. The wooden pillars that support the ceiling are dark with age and the grease of 1,000 leaning backs, their grains standing out like the lines on an old man's face. You feel a sense of profound connection to the physical world, a realization that you are as much a part of this building as the bricks and the mortar. The exhaustion in your body begins to shift, moving from a heavy weight to a soft, floating sensation, as if the boundaries between your skin and the cool air were beginning to dissolve. You close your eyes for a long moment, listening to the city's heartbeat, the distant, muffled splash of a fountain, the occasional cry of a bird, and the low, constant drone of the heat itself, which sounds like the humming of a giant, invisible hive. In this half-dreaming state, you are no longer a woman of the streets, but a spirit of the city, ancient and enduring, watching the centuries pass like clouds across the face of the sun. The memories of lost connections, friends who moved on to other cities, family whose faces have blurred like worn coins, and the brief, intense flickers of kindness from strangers drift past you without the sting of regret. They are merely part of the long, winding path that brought you to this bench, this cup of wine, and this moment of midday peace. You think of the small, hidden acts of survival you see every day, the way a baker gives an extra scrap of bread to a hungry child, the way a slave shares a joke with a fellow laborer, and the way you yourself offer a steady gaze to those who are lost in the city's vastness. These are the true currencies of Rome, the small, silver coins of human connection that keep the world from becoming a cold, heartless machine. You feel a deep, quiet gratitude for the coolness of the stone, the simplicity of the beans, and the temporary suspension of the day's demands. The heat outside is still formidable, but it has lost its aggressive edge, the shadows beginning to stretch their long, thin fingers across the street once more. Slowly, the tavern begins to stir. The porter shifts and groans, rubbing his face with large, calloused hands, while the tavern keeper begins to move with a bit more purpose, rearranging the ceramic beakers on the counter. The air remains warm, but there is a subtle change in the lighter shifting from the harsh, white glare of noon to a softer, more golden hue that speaks of the approaching afternoon. You feel the first faint breath of a breeze from the direction of the river, a movement of air so slight it barely disturbs the dust in the light shaft, yet it is enough to signal that the meridiatio is coming to an end. You take the last sip of your wine, feeling the cool liquid travel down your throat, and straighten your tunic with a slow, rhythmic grace. The stiffness in your limbs has softened, replaced by a quiet, steady readiness to face the remainder of the day. You are not the same woman who entered the tavern an hour ago. You have been washed clean by the silence and the shadow, your spirit replenished by the slow, meditative journey through the halls of memory as you stand up. The floor feels solid and supportive beneath your sandals, and the weight of your toga feels less like a burden and more like a familiar, protective shell. You move toward the entrance, pausing for a moment in the transition zone where the cool air of the interior meets the mounting warmth of the street. Outside, the city is beginning to wake up. Again a door creaks open. A voice calls out from a balcony, and the rhythmic clop-clop of a horse's hooves marks the return of the world's motion. The sun is no longer directly overhead. Its light now catching the upper stories of the buildings and turning the high, unglazed windows into squares of brilliant, liquid gold. The transition from the deep, subterranean stillness of the tavern back into the light of mid-afternoon is a gradual unfolding, a slow stretching of the city's limbs as the oppressive weight of the midday heat begins its long, reluctant retreat. As you step once more onto the basalt paving stones, you notice that the quality of the air has shifted. It is no longer a static, baking pressure, but a moving, living thing, carrying the first faint whispers of a breeze that has travelled over the shaded gardens of the wealthy on the Palatine and across the cooling surface of the Tiber. The world is reawakening in layers, a slow-motion symphony of returning activity. From the open doorways of the workshops, the rhythmic sounds of industry begin to punctuate the air, the clinkly-clunk of the metalworker's hammer, the dry, abrasive rasp of a carpenter's plane, and the rhythmic thud of a weaver's loom, each sound a heartbeat in the collective body of Rome. Children, their voices thin and bright like silver bells, emerge from the deep shadows of the alleyways to resume their games with knucklebones or bits of polished glass, their laughter echoing off the high brick walls of the insulae. You move through this rekindled energy with a quiet, persistent fatigue that has settled into the small of your back, yet it is a familiar companion, a weight you carry with the practiced resignation of one who knows that the day's work is only half completed. As you walk back toward your usual place near the grand porticoes, the social landscape of Rome reveals itself in the subtle interactions of those who inhabit its margins. You pass the old woman who sells roasted chestnuts from a brazier, her skin the color and texture of dark, seasoned leather. She offers you a brief, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared endurance that requires no words. Further on, a stationarius, a guard tasked with the quiet maintenance of order in the district, leans against a fluted column, his hand resting idly on the hilt of his gladiator. His eyes meet yours with a flicker of recognition, but it is an indifference born of familiarity rather than hostility. In the eyes of the law, your presence here is a matter of administrative record, a reality that exists within a framework of rigid, historically grounded classifications. Rome is a city of order and lists, where every soul has a place, even those whom the broader society views with a complex mixture of necessity and stigma. You are registered with the edict, your name entered into the official rolls of those who practice your trader, process that confers a certain transparency and regulation to your life, even as it marks you with infamia. This legal status, a permanent stain on one's reputation that strips away certain rights of citizenship, is the invisible shadow that follows you through the golden light. It is the reason you wear the dark toga instead of the stola of the matron, a visual signal of your standing that the law demands so that there may be no confusion in the public eye. Yet, within the quiet community of the street, these distinctions soften. You are not a legal category to the man who sells you bread or the guard who watches the crowd, but a neighbor, a witness, and a fellow traveler in the heat of the afternoon. The shadows are beginning to lengthen now, stretching out from the bases of the temples and the arches like long, cool fingers of blue ink. You return to the shade of the colonnade, finding a familiar spot near a statue of a forgotten general, where the marble is smooth and the view of the thoroughfare is clear. The city's return to motion is more pronounced here. The ban on wheeled traffic during the day is still in effect for most, but the hand-drawn carts of the merchants are returning in force, loaded with crates of figs, bundles of dried herbs, an amphorae of oil that slosh rhythmically with every step. You watch a group of slaves unloading heavy blocks of travertine for a new construction project, their muscles rippling under skin slicked with sweat, their movements coordinated by a low-frequency chant that anchors their labor in time. There is no drama in this observation, only a deep, non-judgmental immersion in the mechanics of survival. You think of the aediles who oversee the markets and the streets, the officials who collect the taxes on your earnings, and the complex web of social attitudes that allow your profession to exist as a necessary, if marginalized, part of the Roman urban fabric. To the Roman mind, the world is divided into the public and the private, the sacred and the profane, and you occupy a liminal space between them, a presence that is essential to the functioning of the city's appetites, yet kept at a distance by the rituals of status. You accept this reality with a calm, internal stillness, knowing that your value is not defined by the laws of men, but by the steady, unyielding strength of your own spirit. Patience is the primary currency of your afternoon. You lean against the stone, the coolness of the marble seeping through the wool of your toga, and watch the kaleidoscope of Roman life rotate before you. You notice the way a merchant carefully counts out sesterti for a customer, the metal coins flashing in the sun like tiny, golden sparks. The economy of Rome is a tangible thing, a flow of bronze, silver, and gold that dictates the movements of every soul, from the emperor to the lowliest street sweeper. You understand the value of these coins, the cost of a peck of wheat, the price of a flask of oil, the weight of the rent due at the end of the month. Every interaction you have is a transaction in this vast system, a quiet negotiation of time and body for the means of continued existence. As the sun continues its slow, inevitable descent, the light begins to change, losing its harsh, white edge and softening into a rich, buttery yellow that gilds the edges of the buildings and the tops of the cypress trees. This is the hour when the city's beauty becomes almost painful in its clarity. The red brick facades of the insulae glowing with an inner fire, and the marble of the forum shining with a soft, pearlescent luster. You find yourself in a quiet conversation with a fellow worker, a man who carries water for the nearby baths. As he pauses to rest his heavy ceramic jars by the fountain, your talk is not of grand events or deep emotions, but of the mundane details of the datha, rising price of grain at the markets, the rumors of a new festival being planned in the Circus Maximus, and the persistent ache in your feet. This quiet community of the margins is built on these small, everyday exchanges, a shared language of endurance that provides a sense of belonging in a city that can often feel vast and indifferent. He moves on, his jars clinking softly, and you are left again with your observations. You watch a group of soldiers in their off-duty tunics, their laughter loud and boisterous as they head toward a nearby tavern. Their presence, a reminder of the power and the reach of the empire. They are part of the landscape you navigate. Their needs and their whims a constant factor in the calculations of your day. You have learned to read the subtle shifts in the crowd, to identify the potential client from the idle passerby, to gauge safety and risk with a single, scanning look. It is a skill honed over years of quiet watching, a form of wisdom that is never written down but is essential for survival. The mid-afternoon light is now spreading across the city in wide, golden swathes, turning the dust kicked up by the returning carts into a shimmering, ethereal mist. You see the shadow of the great obelisk in the center of the square, lengthening until it touches the base of the temple steps. A giant needle marking the progress of the day toward its conclusion. The heat has softened into a warm, fragrant embrace, carrying the scent of roasting meat, wood smoke, and the drying mud of the riverbanks. You feel a sense of quiet resignation, a realization that the day is nearing its final act, and the long, slow rhythm of your labor will soon transition into the different, more complex energy of the evening. You adjust the drape of your toga one last time, the fabric feeling heavy and familiar, and take a deep, grounding breath of the golden air. The city is preparing to move again, to shift its weight and change its tone, and you move with it, a steady, enduring presence in the heart of the Roman world. The light is growing richer, the shadows deeper, and the city of Rome, in all its chaotic, beautiful, and stratified glory, begins to glow with the soft, incandescent fire of the approaching evening, a world made of stone and light, waiting for the first stars to appear over the 7 hills. The transition from the golden, honeyed stillness of the late afternoon to the flickering, amber-hued energy of the early evening is a slow, atmospheric deepening, a thickening of the air as the sun finally dips, its burning rim below the horizon of the Janiculum hill. This is the hour of the crepusculum, that violet-tinted liminal space where the city of Rome begins to shed its public, architectural dignity and reveals its more intimate, shadowed heart. As you stand in the lengthening shadows of the great portico, you watch the transformation unfold with a quiet, observant gaze, feeling the cooling breath of the evening breeze as it ripples through the heavy wool of your toga. The intense white heat of the day has been replaced by a soft, enveloping warmth that rises from the baked stones of the street, carrying with it the sense of a million evening rituals, the pungent, resinous smoke of pint torches being prepared by the vigils, the sweet, heavy perfume of jasmine from private courtyards, and the savory, mouth-watering aroma of grilled sausages and honey-soaked cakes from the neighborhood popane. The city is changing its rhythm. The rhythmic thud of construction and the sharp cries of the market vendors have faded, replaced by the rising, melodic murmur of social life spilling out into the open air. You see the massive doors of the great bathhouses swinging open, releasing a humid, cedar-scented cloud of steam and a stream of men, their skins scrubbed pink and glowing, wrapped in clean linen as they head toward the taverns and dinner parties of the evening. In this shifting light, you move toward a small, quiet fountain tucked behind a marble archway to refresh yourself for the busiest hours that lie ahead. The water is cold and clear, reflecting the deepening purple of the sky, and you splash it over your wrists and temples, feeling the sharp, grounding chill wash away the lingering lethargy of the afternoon heat. There is a ritualized calm to your movements as you adjust the drape of your dark toga, ensuring the folds fall with a heavy, purposeful elegance that marks your presence in the deepening dusk. You use a small, polished bronze mirror to check the coils of your hair, smoothing back a few stray strands that have escaped the bone comb, and you apply a light fragrant oil to your skin that smells of earth and pressed roses. There is no haste in these actions. They are a form of mental fortification, a way of steadying your spirit before the chaotic high-stakes theater of the night begins in earnest. Around you, the city is beginning to glow with 1,000 tiny stars of man-made light. Slaves are moving through the streets with long poles, lighting the oil lamps that hang outside the shops and the private doorways, their flames flickering and dancing in the light breeze like captive fireflies. The orange glow of the torches casts long, wavering shadows across the basalt paving stones, turning the familiar streets into a landscape of mystery and possibility, where every doorway is a dark mouth and every corner holds a secret. The soundscape of Rome is also shifting, the singular roar of the midday crowd breaking apart into a more complex, textured tapestry of human connection. You hear the distant, rhythmic strumming of a lyre from a wealthy man's garden, the notes rising and falling like the sound of a distant stream, and the sudden, raucous burst of laughter from a nearby tavern where the first wineskins of the evening are being opened. The air is filled with the low, constant hum of voices, the quick, staccato chatter of Greek, the deep, guttural tones of German mercenaries, and the fluid, melodic flow of Latin, all blending into a single, vibrant pulse that vibrates in the stone beneath your feet. You find your usual place again, leaning back against a fluted column that still retains a ghost of the sun's warmth, and watch as the social hierarchy of the city recalibrates itself for the night. The litter-bearers move with more urgency now, carrying the wealthy toward their banquets, while the laborers and the poor gather on the steps of the public buildings, sharing bread and wine as they watch the spectacle of the evening unfold. You are a part of this movement, a steady, quiet presence in the shifting light, your eyes scanning the crowd with a soft, non-judgmental focus that has been sharpened by years of patient watching as the darkness begins to settle in earnest. The sky above the rooftops turns from a bruised plum to a deep, velvety obsidian, and the first true stars appear over the silhouette of the Capitoline Hill. The cool air is a relief, a liquid sensation that flows over your skin and carries away the last traces of the day's fatigue. You think of the legalities that bind your night, the Lex Julia, and the regulations that dictate where you may stand and how you may interact, but these thoughts are secondary to the immediate, sensory reality of the moment. You are a navigator of human desire, a witness to the loneliness and the longings that emerge once the sun goes down, and you prepare yourself to hold space for those who will seek you out. There is a sense of profound endurance in your heart, a quiet understanding that you are an essential part of this eternal city, as enduring as the stone of the temples and the water of the Tiber. The flickering light of the torches catches the silver in your hair and the steady, calm light in your eyes, a testament to the quiet, unyielding strength of a life lived in the shadows of greatness. The city is now fully awake in its night skin, a world of firelight and shadow, of music and muffled footfalls. And as you step forward into the deepening dusk, you move with the rhythmic, hypnotic grace of a woman who knows that the long, slow story of the night is only just beginning. The air is filled with the scent of wood smoke and the promise of the unknown, and you are ready, a steady and tranquil soul in the heart of the Roman night. The darkness that now claims the city is not a void, but a thick, velvety presence that reshapes the world into a series of isolated pools of amber light and vast, echoing canyons of shadow. As you move through the streets of the 8th and 9th hours, the monumental scale of Rome seems to shrink, the towering insulae pressing closer together, and the grand arches of the aqueducts becoming skeletal giants in the gloom. The torches of the vigils, the city's nocturnal guardians, create rhythmic stabs of orange light that dance across the damp basalt of the streets, their reflections shimmering in the puddles like spilled gold. You walk with a slow, deliberate cadence, your footsteps sounding sharper and more resonant against the stone, now that the city's daytime roar has been replaced by the more intimate, staccato noises of the night. There is the muffled thud-thud of a heavy wooden door being barred, the distant, frantic barking of a dog in a locked courtyard, and the occasional, sudden burst of laughter that spills from a high, unglazed window, hanging for a moment in the cool air before dissolving into the silence. The air itself has grown crisp and thin, carrying the heavy scent of charred wood, the briny breath of the river, and the lingering sweet smoke of the incense burned in domestic shrines. You feel a deep, pervasive emotional fatigue, a weight that lives not in your muscles but in the very center of your being, born of the long hours of watching and the constant, practiced detachment required to navigate the sea of human need. In this nocturnal theater, you are a master of the invisible, inhabiting the edges of the torchlight with a calm, unshakable presence. You watch the nocturnal city dwellers pass, the wealthy revelers being hurried home by slaves carrying heavy bound lanterns, the weary night watchmen on their rounds, their leather armor creaking rhythmically, and the occasional lone traveler moving quickly with their cloak pulled tight against the chill. There is a specific, quiet tension to the Roman night, an awareness of the fragility of order once the sun has set. Without the benefit of street lighting, every traveler is a small sun, their lantern or torch a fragile bubble of safety in a world of potential shadows. You observe this with a steady, non-judgmental eye, noting the way people's voices drop to whispers as they cross the vast, open squares, or the way they instinctively move toward the center of the road to avoid the dark mouths of the alleys. Your own safety is a matter of long-standing intuition and the silent geography of the streets you have come to know as well as the lines on your own palms. You find a place to rest near the base of a great travertine pillar, its surface cold and reassuring against your shoulder, and you watch the play of light and shadow across the face of the buildings. The flickering torches turn the carved friezes of the temples into living things, the stone heroes and gods seeming to breathe and shift in the wavering glow. As the hours crawl toward the middle of the night, your exhaustion takes on a new quality, a soft, blurring sensation that makes the world feel distant and dreamlike. You find yourself observing the people who pass through your orbit with a sense of profound, quiet empathy, seeing the lines of worry on a merchant's face or the lonely, searching quality in a young soldier's gaze. Your detachment is not a lack of feeling, but a necessary shield, a way of preserving the core of yourself in a world that often views you only as a function or a shadow. You think of the millions of souls now sleeping in the hives above you, their dreams a silent, invisible tide that flows over the city, and you feel like a shepherd of the night, a witness to the hours that most people never see. The sounds of the night are distinct and evocative, the rhythmic clink-clink of a metalworker finishing a late task, the low, melodic chanting of a priest in a distant temple, and the constant, sighing sound of the wind through the colonnades. Historically, the Roman night is governed by a different set of rules. The ban on carts is lifted, and now, through the quieter streets, you hear the distant, heavy rumble of wagons bringing in the grain and stone that will fuel tomorrow's labors. This low-frequency vibration travels through the earth and into the stone you lean against, a reminder that even in its sleep, Rome is a machine that never truly stops. The practice of your trade in these hours is a quiet, wordless negotiation, a series of looks and gestures that happen in the margins of the torchlight. You have learned to read the rhythm of the night, to know when the energy of the taverns is shifting from celebration to a more somber, reflective mood. You see the fatigue in others that mirrors your own, the way men linger by the fountains, not for the water, but for a moment of stillness in the dark. Your interactions are brief, characterized by a soft-spoken directness and a mutual understanding of the fragility of the hour. There is no drama here, only the steady, mechanical repetition of human connection in a city that never closes its eyes. You notice the small details of the night, the way the frost begins to form on the edges of a marble basin, the specific, hollow sound of a coin dropping into a leather pouch, and the way the stars seem to pulse in time with your own slow heartbeat. Your mind drifts occasionally to the domestic scenes you will never fully inhabit, the warmth of a family hearth, the safety of a locked door, but you do not dwell on them with bitterness. Instead, you find a quiet, solitary pride in your own endurance, in your ability to stand fast in the heart of the night and remain whole, as the busiest hours of the nocturnal commerce begin to wane. The air grows even colder, and the silence deepens into a heavy, expectant weight. The torches in the street brackets are beginning to burn low, their flames sputtering and hissing as the oil runs dry, casting long, frantic shadows before they finally wink out. You feel the exhaustion deepening in your bones, a slow-moving tide that pulls at your eyelids and makes the stone beneath you feel like the softest silk. The city is in its deepest sleep now, that profound pause before the first hint of grey begins to touch the eastern horizon. The rumble of the supply carts grows more frequent, the carters' shouts echoing strangely in the empty squares, and you know that the cycle is almost complete. You take a final, deep breath of the cold night air, feeling it fill your lungs with a crisp, sharp clarity. The world is a masterpiece of obsidian and amber, a place of profound beauty and quiet, unyielding struggle. You adjust your toga, the fabric now heavy with the dampness of the night, and prepare to begin the slow walk back toward the Sabura. Your footsteps a rhythmic, solitary beat in the heart of the sleeping empire. The stars are starting to fade, the darkness is beginning to thin, and the long, slow journey of the night is drawing to its quiet, weary conclusion, leaving you with a sense of profound, exhausted peace in the center of the eternal city. The deep obsidian heart of the night is a time of thinning, gradual, almost imperceptible unraveling of the city's vibrant tapestry until only the bare, structural threads remain. As the 10th and 11th hours pass, the raucous energy that defined the early evening begins to dissipate like wood smoke in a winter breeze, leaving behind a silence that feels heavy and resonant, as if the stones themselves are finally exhaling the day's heat. You notice the transition in the way the light behaves. The grand torches that once roared with amber defiance are now mere stubs, flickering with a tired, rhythmic pulse, while the smaller oil lamps in the windows of the insulae have gone dark one by one, leaving the upper stories of the city to merge with the star-strewn sky. The air has turned truly cold now, a sharp, crystalline chill that drifts up from the Tiber and settles into the marrow of your bones, making the wool of your toga feel thin and inadequate. Your weariness is no longer a hum, but a profound, aching stillness that has claimed your limbs, making every movement a slow, deliberate act of will. You find yourself retreating further into the shadow of a weathered brick archway, counting your coins with fingers that are stiff and clumsy from the cold. The metallic chink of the copper quadrantes and the occasional dull thud of a bronze sestertius are the only sounds in your immediate world, a small, private accounting of a long day's endurance. There are small disappointments to be measured, the potential clients who looked but did not stop, the hours spent in the wind for a handful of copper, but there is also a minor, quiet relief in the simple fact that the labor is ending, and the demands of the public world are finally receding. Introspection comes to you in this late hour not as a storm, but as a slow, rising tide, gentle and inevitable. You lean your head against the rough texture of the brickwork, closing your eyes and allowing the sounds of the dying night to wash over you. You think of the passage of time, not in years or decades, but in the subtle changes you feel in your own body, the way the morning stiffness takes longer to fade, the way the dampness of the stone seems to bite more deeply into your joints, and the way the reflection in the bronze mirror has slowly softened, the sharp edges of youth replaced by the weathered, enduring lines of survival. There is no bitterness in this realization, only a quiet, meditative acceptance of the cycle of life that governs all things in Rome, from the rise and fall of emperors to the slow crumbling of the very walls that shelter you. You find yourself wondering about the girl you once were, the one who lived in the sunlight and the grass, and you realize that she is not gone, but merely folded deep within the layers of the woman you have become. Survival, you understand now, is not a dramatic victory but a quiet, daily persistence. It is the ability to find a moment of peace in a cold archway, to savor a crust of bread, and to look at the vast, indifferent city with a gaze that is both clear and kind. Your hopes have simplified over the years, narrowing down from the grand, impossible dreams of youth to the small, tangible graces of the presenter, warm bed, a secure lock on the door, and the knowledge that you have navigated another day with your dignity intact. The city around you is now a landscape of ghosts and echoes. The taverns have pulled in their benches and barred their doors, the last lingering drunks having stumbled off into the darkness, leaving the streets to the stray dogs and the rhythmic, metallic clatter of the supply wagons. These wagons are the heartbeat of the late night, their heavy wooden wheels grinding against the basalt paving stones with a sound like rolling thunder, carrying the grain and the oil that the city will consume tomorrow. You watch them pass from the safety of your shadow, the drivers hunched over their teams, their faces illuminated for a fleeting second by the dying embers of a street brazier. The isolation of the hour is profound, yet it does not feel lonely. Rather, it feels like a shared secret between you and the stones of Rome. You observe the way the starlight catches the frost on the rim of a nearby fountain, turning the water into a shimmering silver mirror that reflects the infinite depth of the heavens. Everything is slow, everything is quiet, and the pacing of your own thoughts reflects this nocturnal stillness, moving with the languid grace of a river nearing the sea. You think of the registration rolls of the Edo, those dusty scrolls that contain your name and your status, and you feel a strange, detached amusement at the idea that your complex, living history could be reduced to a few strokes of ink. You are more than the sum of your legal standing. You are a witness to the secret life of the empire, a keeper of the stories that are whispered in the dark and forgotten by the dawn. Physical exhaustion has a way of clarifying the mind, stripping away the trivial and the unnecessary until only the essential truths remain. As you prepare to leave your post and begin the long, slow walk back toward the Subura, you feel a sense of completion, a quiet satisfaction in having seen the day through from its first grey light to its final obsidian depth. You adjust your mantle, pulling it tight across your chest to trap the last of your body heat, and step out from the protection of the archway. The world is vast and empty, the monumental architecture of the Forum appearing like a forest of marble giants in the pale light of the stars. You walk with a heavy, rhythmic tread, the sound of your sandals on the stones a steady, reassuring beat that marks the end of your public day. the small disappointments of the night, the coins not earned. The cold, not avoided, seem to shrink in significance as you focus on the simple, singular goal of home. You think of your room in the insula, the small, familiar space that holds your few possessions and your quietest thoughts, and the anticipation of rest becomes a warm, golden light in your mind. The city is preparing for its briefest period of true silence, that suspended moment between the death of the night and the birth of the morning, and you move through it like a shadow returning to its source. The air is still, the light is dim, and the long, slow narrative of your survival continues its steady, unyielding path toward the promise of sleep. You take one final, lingering look at the silhouette of the great temple on the hill, its columns standing like silent sentinels over the sleeping world. And then you turn into the narrow mouth of your street, leaving the grand, cold theatre of Rome behind as you seek the modest, enduring sanctuary of your own life. The stars are at their brightest now, pulsing with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. And as you reach the doorway of your building, you feel the profound, quiet weight of the night settling over you, a final, peaceful benediction for a day well lived in the heart of the eternal city. The journey back through the winding arteries of the city is a walk through a world made of charcoal and silver, where the monumental grandeur of Rome has finally folded itself into a silent, sleeping submission. As you leave the wider thoroughfares of the Forum behind, the streets of the Suburra narrow until the overhanging balconies of the timber-framed insulae seem to reach out and touch one another, creating a dark, protective tunnel that swallows the pale light of the stars. The air here is trapped and still, holding the scent of damp masonry, cold ash, and the faint sweet temps of wine-soaked wood emanating from the shuttered taverns. Your footsteps, once lost in the collective heartbeat of the million-headed city, now sound with a startling, singular clarity, rhythmic thwack-clack of leather on basalt that echoes upward into the high, unglazed windows where 1,000 dreams are being spun in the dark. There is a profound, heavy hush to these pre-dawn hours, a time when the city belongs to the shadows and the few living things that navigate them with soft, predatory grace. A lean, ginger-colored cat streaks across your path, its eyes catching a stray glint of starlight before it vanishes into the black maw of a drainage grate. And in the distance, you hear the low, rhythmic murmur of a patrol of vigils passing through a parallel alley, their iron-shod boots creating a metallic counterpoint to the silence. You do not fear them. In this hour, you are merely another ghost moving through the architecture of the night, a solitary figure returning to the sanctuary of the hive. The physical discomfort that has been a dull, constant background noise throughout the evening now shifts into a sharper, more insistent reality as the adrenaline of the workday fades. Your calves thrum with a heavy, pulsing ache, and the strap of your sandal has begun to chafe against the soft skin of your ankle. A small but nagging reminder of the miles paced upon the unforgiving stone. Your lower back feels compressed, a solid knot of tension that speaks of long hours spent leaning against marble pillars and standing in the drafty shadows of colonnades. Yet, beneath this weariness, there is a rising, golden sense of relief, a private, internal softening that comes from knowing the threshold of your own door is finally within reach. The public mask you have worn since dawn, that practiced shield of detachment and observational calm, begins to slip away, leaving behind the raw, honest exhaustion of a woman who has given her day to the city and now reclaims herself. You turn a final corner, passing a small, soot-stained shrine to the Lares where a single, guttering lamp provides a pool of flickering amber light. And there, rising like a dark cliff against the indigo sky, is your insulae. The ascent up the narrow, winding wooden staircase is a slow, meditative climb. Each step a deliberate victory over the gravity of your own fatigue. The wood groans and creaks beneath your weight, a familiar, domestic language that welcomes you back into the vertical labyrinth of the building. You pass the doors of your neighbors, hearing the soft, rhythmic snoring of a family of weavers and the muffled, restless stirring of a child, and you feel a strange, quiet sense of belonging to this community of the tired. When you finally reach your own door, the wood is cool and solid beneath your hand, and the heavy iron key feels like a significant weight as you guide it into the lock. The click of the bolt sliding back is the most beautiful sound of the day, a definitive, metallic end to your public life. Stepping inside, the air of your room is stale and warm, smelling of your own life, your own scent, and the faint, acrid ghost of the oil lamp you extinguished so many hours ago. You pull the door shut and lean against it for a long, unmoving moment, your eyes adjusting to the deep, velvety gloom of the interior. The silence here is different from the silence of the street. It is a sheltered, intentional quiet that belongs only to you. The domestic routines of your return are performed with a slow, ritualized grace, a series of small acts that bridge the gap between the street and the bed. You begin by unfastening the heavy, dust-laden folds of your toga, the dark wool falling away from your shoulders with a soft, liberating weight. You drape it carefully over a wooden stool, smoothing the fabric with a tired hand, a gesture of respect for the garment that has been your armor. Next, you sit on the edge of your low bed, the straw mattress rustling softly, and begin to unlace your sandals. As the leather straps fall away, the relief is almost physical. A cool wave of sensation that travels up your legs as your feet finally touch the bare, packed hearth floor. Your skin is mapped with the red lines of the bindings and coated in a fine, grey patina of Roman dust, the pulverized marble and volcanic tuff of the city's bones. You reach for your ceramic basin, pouring the last of the water you fetched yesterday into the bowl. It is tepid and still, but as you wash your face and hands, it feels like a profound purification. You scrub away the soot from your eyes and the salt from your brow. The rhythmic splashing of the water, a soothing, liquid melody in the dark, with your skin clean and damp. You turn to the small leather pouch that contains the day's earnings. You empty the coins onto the table, the metallic clink, a modest and honest sound in the quiet room. You sort them by touch, the small, thin quadrantes, the heavier sturdy feeling, the worn surfaces of the emperor's faces beneath your fingertips. You set aside what is needed for the rent and what must be saved for the baker, tucking the remainder into a small hidden niche in the wall. This is the arithmetic of survival, a quiet, nightly tally that provides a sense of order in a world that often feels chaotic. You find a small piece of cheese, dry and salty, and a few shriveled olives left in a jar, and you eat them slowly, savoring the simple, earthy flavors. You wash it down with a swallow of water, feeling the cool liquid settle in your stomach, grounding you in the physical reality of your own hunger and its satisfaction. There is no haste, no urgency. The world outside may be preparing to wake, but here, in the dim sanctuary of your room, time has slowed to a crawl. Finally, you move toward the bed, the wooden frame creaking in sympathetic greeting. You pull on a clean, light tunic of undyed linen, the fabric cool and soft against your scrubbed skin, a sensation of pure, unadulterated luxury. As you slide beneath the heavy woolen blanket, the straw mattress yields to your weight, contouring to the tired curves of your body with a familiar, rustling embrace. You lie still, your head resting on a simple bolster, and feel the profound heaviness of your limbs as they finally surrender to the law of gravity. You are not yet asleep, but suspended in that soft, liminal space where the boundaries of the self begin to dissolve into the darkness. Your eyes are open, watching the faint, greyish square of the window, where the sky is just beginning to thin from obsidian to a deep, bruised purple. The city is still there, just beyond the walls, and you listen to its faint, pre-dawn murmurs, the distant, rhythmic rumble of the last supply wagons, the first lonely cry of a rooster from a nearby courtyard, and the soft, collective sigh of the million-headed beast as it prepares to turn over in its sleep. You feel a sense of immense, quiet peace, a realization that you have navigated the currents of the day and the night and have returned once more to the safety of your own heart. The world of the forum, the ediles, the clients, and the stone is gone, replaced by the rhythmic pulse of your own breathing and the slow, steady cooling of the air. You are a single soul in the vastness of Rome, a witness to its glory and its grit, and as the first faint suggestion of light begins to touch the rooftops of the Subura, you close your eyes, letting the sounds of the eternal city fade into a distant, golden hum. You have endured, you have survived, and now, in the hallowed quiet of your own room, the long, slow story of your day is finally, gently, complete. The space between wakefulness and the deep, silent ocean of sleep is a vast, shimmering landscape where the sharp edges of the Roman day begin to dissolve into a soft, formless mist. As you lie perfectly still upon the straw mattress, the heavy woolen blanket tucked beneath your chin, the physical weight of your body seems to sink through the frame of the bed, through the floorboards of the insula, and into the very foundations of the city itself. Your exhaustion has reached a stage of profound, rhythmic resonance, a state where the individual aches of your calves, your back, and your feet have merged into a single, low-frequency hum of pure existence. The emotional numbness that protected you during the long hours in the shadow of the colonnades now feels like a cool, silken veil drawn over your mind, insulating you from the memories of the street and the requirements of the toga. In this sacred, private stillness, your thoughts move with the slow, languid grace of a river nearing the sea, no longer hurried by the pursuit of coins or the scanning of crowds. You think of the millions of individual lives currently suspended in this same pre-dawn amber, the bakers kneading the first dough of the day, the soldiers changing the watch on the Servian wall, the wealthy dreaming of their estates, and the slaves dreaming of nothing at all, and you feel a sense of quiet, almost invisible connection to the collective breath of the empire. There is no drama in this realization, only a deep, non-judgmental acceptance of the immense turning wheel of time that governs every soul in the eternal city, as the absolute darkness of the room begins to thin into a bruised, charcoal grey. A small, fragile hope for tomorrow begins to stir in the quietest corner of your heart, not as a grand ambition, but as a simple, enduring light. It is the hope of a cool cup of water, of a morning when the air is particularly sweet with the scent of pine, of a brief moment of kindness from a stranger, and of the steady, unshakable rhythm of survival that has carried you this far. You find yourself focusing on the textures of your immediate world with a sleepy, hypnotic intensity, the rough weave of the blanket against your cheek, the soft, rhythmic hiss-hush of your own breathing, and the way the shadows in the corners of the ceiling seem to pulse in time with the heartbeat of the building. The sounds of the city outside are beginning to undergo their daily, inevitable alchemy, shifting from the hollow, lonely echoes of the deep night to the first tentative murmurs of a new awakening. You hear the distant, metallic clink of a bucket being lowered into a cistern, the rhythmic, muffled thud of a neighbor's door being unbarred, and the soft, collective sigh of the wind as it travels down the narrow corridor of the street. These sounds do not startle you. They are the familiar, grounding notes of a symphony you have heard 1,000 times before. The auditory map of a world that is preparing to repeat itself with a patient, cyclical grace. The pacing of your mind slows further, the sentences of your internal narrative lengthening and softening until they are mere ripples on the surface of a dark pond. You are a witness to the transition, a solitary soul watching the death of one day and the birth of the next from the safety of your own skin. The memory of the sun's white-hot glare on the marble of the forum feels like a story told in a different language, a distant and fading dream of heat and noise that has no power over the cool, violet-tinted sanctuary of your room. You feel a sense of profound, quiet gratitude for the privacy of the dark, for the lock on the door, and for the simplicity of the linen tunic that holds you in its soft embrace. Your awareness begins to contract, retreating from the vast, sprawling map of Rome and settling entirely into the rhythmic, cooling flow of your own life. The city is a masterpiece of stone and desire, of law and hunger, but here, in the moments before sleep, it is merely a distant, golden hum at the edge of your consciousness. You think of the coins hidden in the wall, a small cold weight of security that allows your heart to beat a little more slowly, a little more steadily. The emotional fatigue of the day is finally being washed away by the tide of approaching rest, leaving your spirit clean and quiet, like the polished floor of a temple after the worshippers have departed. The light in the room is changing now, shifting from the deep, velvety obsidian of the night to a pale, pearlescent rose that touches the edges of the wooden stool and the rim of the ceramic basin. It is the return of the dawn, the first tentative hint that the sun is once more climbing the long, hidden curve of the earth to claim its place over the 7 hills. You watch this light with a soft, half-closed gaze, feeling the transition in your very marrow. The cycle is completing itself, the narrative of the previous day folding its wings and settling into the soil of the past to make room for the new. There is a profound peace in this repetition, a sense of safety in the knowledge that the world will continue its slow, rhythmic turning regardless of your fears or your triumphs. You are a part of the stone, a part of the light, and a part of the silence. The exhaustion that once felt like a burden now feels like a gift, a heavy, golden anchor that pulls you down into the deep, restorative currents of the unconscious. The sounds of the city are growing more distinct, the clop-clop of a lone horse, the call of a bird from a tiled roof, the distant, melodic ringing of metal on stone, but they are now merely background, music to your own internal stillness. Your breathing has become a slow, rhythmic tide, a deep and steady ebb and flow that mimics the movement of the sea at Ostia. Each inhale is a drawing in of the cool, pre-dawn air, and each exhale is a letting go of the city, the toga, the coins, and the self. You are drifting now, the boundaries between the straw mattress and your own body becoming blurred and beautiful. The memories of the day, the dawn light on the insula, the heat of the midday portico, the golden glow of the evening tavern, and the cold silver of the midnight archway, all blending into a single, continuous ribbon of time that winds its way through the landscape of your mind. You feel a final, lingering sense of acceptance. A quiet yes to the life you have lived and the life that awaits you when the sun is high. The darkness is no longer a void, but a soft, maternal embrace that holds you with a tenderness the waking world rarely offers. You are safe. You are hidden. You are whole. The faint, early light is now strong enough to reveal the dust motes dancing in the stillness of the room. Tiny, golden spirits of the coming morning. But you are no longer there to see them. The deep, heavy pull of sleep has finally claimed you, drawing you down into the warm, silent depths where the history of Rome and the story of your own heart become one and the same. The long day's journey is complete, the cycle is closed, and as the first true rays of the new sun begin to gild the high, terracotta rooftops of the Suburra, you are lost in the profound, restorative sanctuary of a dreamless rest. The city outside begins its climb toward the roar of the morning, its streets filling once more with the pulse of 1,000,000 feet. But inside this room, there is only the slow, steady breathing of a soul at peace. The light returns, the shadows retreat, and the eternal city begins its song anew. While you sleep, a quiet and enduring presence in the heart of the world, ready for whatever the dawn may bring.